about to be served to the people in Gaza. Uh, if you heard yesterday's press conference with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US President Donald Trump, it sounds like, by my understanding, the closest thing to a actual just solution after nearly 16 months after the October 7th attack and the Palestinian people celebrating it, which in return they got, some buildings destroyed, warnings about the buildings being destroyed so that they themselves make it out of those buildings, unlimited humanitarian aid given to them in part by their victims. This recent proposal, suggestion, I don't even know what to call it, by Trump, as far as I can see, is the closest thing to justice. My co-host James Valliant and I disagree strongly on this, and we're going to get into that. But let me try to explain as best as I understand what Trump is actually suggesting. He mentioned something about relocating the people from Gaza to elsewhere. He said it could be one country, it could be 20 countries, and rebuilding it and making it really nice. Something that we on the channel have kind of half jokingly said. We'll do a conference one day in Gaza in a hotel there. And look, I don't know if that's happening, but this is certainly the closest I've heard to anything like that. He also said the U.S. will take it over, so it'll be a U.S. territory. So there's a lot to talk about here, a lot to try to understand in what he said. And is this the right thing to do, or is it not? One of us enthusiastically supports it, at least compared to all other solutions that have been tried. One of us does not. Welcome to the Daily Objective. I'm joined by James Valliant. James, why? What do you think about this, and why?
Well, first, we have to put everything Trump says through the interpretive lens of Donald Trump. When he says something, it's not necessarily, it's certainly not an idea or a principle. It's generally it's an opening bid in a negotiation. Whether it's about Greenland or Panama or Canada, you can almost guarantee that if Trump says something about international affairs, it's not to be taken fully seriously. Unfortunately, his words don't have that kind of weight. It could be just an opening bid. And when he suggests the involvement of other Arab countries in the area, he named specifically Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia. Then obviously what he's trying to suggest, I think, is if you guys can't handle it and take care of the situation, then we will, in effect. I think that's the best way to interpret it. Now, the we will part does indicate that there could be an American occupation. Certainly, the Palestinian, so-called Palestinians who live in Gaza, the Gazans, have lost any right to self-rule through their continuous attacks on their neighbor Israel. And they're like a dictatorship. They're like an aggressive dictatorship at the end of World War II. They can and should be occupied, just as the Allies occupied Germany, just as America occupied Japan. And we set up a camp there in those countries, and we said we're going to stay. We stayed 7 years in Japan. We said because we were forcing a new educational and governmental system on the people. And until we were confident that it would carry on its own peacefully, we remained. And that's the kind of thing that would be required unless this relocation that he spoke of, I think there's more than 2 million people who live in Gaza. He said 1.8 million people, presumably that's the portion of the population he thinks needs to move. I'm not sure whether he's talking about forced relocation or voluntary relocation. I don't think it could happen voluntarily. One, I don't think that the people of Gaza are willing to give up their attack on Israel, which is the reason why they are there. And secondly, places like Egypt and Jordan have refused the admittance of Palestinians into their country. They know that this is a terrorist population. Even for that context, these are violent people. And so while I absolutely believe that occupation is morally correct and the correct approach here, It should probably be Israel occupying it with American help as opposed to American occupation, which, absent the forced relocation of some 2 million people, and I'm not a big fan of the forced relocation of populations in the history of the world, for mass forced relocations have been a miserable, horrific thing. I think of the partition of the Indian subcontinent in the late 1940s when the British left. I think of the Trail of Tears. Now, you know, I'm not a big Native American supporter, but that was not a good thing. So, forced relocations have been ugly things in the course of history. Not that I have tremendous sympathy for the Palestinians living in Gaza. They have lost the right to rule themselves. They really have. In one sense, you could even say they've lost the right to be there. On the other hand, I don't trust governments doing forced relocations. And what we need to do is occupy the area. The interesting thing about what Trump said is that he seems to echo something we've said repeatedly on this channel. Gaza could be a wonderful place, but you know, it's been nearly 20 years that Hamas has ruled in Gaza, and they didn't lift a. Within days, they were lobbing rockets into Israel. They haven't lifted a finger to make that place a decent place for their people to live. So they have lost any right to rule the place or rule themselves. They're unable to rule themselves. They are aggressive dictators. While I morally am in favor of occupation, and I think that Israel has every right to do so, I wouldn't want to give truth to what has been generally a lie that Israel displaced Palestinians by force when they came into being. This Nakba idea. I mean, no, 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 no. Don't give that the reality, because you know that's exactly what everyone's going to say about this. If there is a forced relocation of 1.8 million Palestinians there. On the other hand, an occupation would be the best thing for the Palestinians there. I think it would
Right.
be, if you were asking me, final word here,
Yeah.
if you ask me, I think that for America, it would be probably an act of altruism. It would take tens of thousands of soldiers to occupy even this teeny little stretch and keep that crazy violent population in check. It would take thousands of soldiers for America to do that. As I say, I think we should help Israel occupy the area, but I do not advocate international altruism, nor the effect that it might have for America to reach halfway across the world and own real estate. He's a real estate developer. So what Donald Trump sees here is the ultimate real estate deal. Yeah, well, if we could get these people to somehow leave, I'm not sure whether it's force or money or what, and then we could set up an international zone that America controls. Wow, wouldn't that be a glorious place? A multicultural, multi-religious place that he envisions, with no doubt a Trump hotel, casino, and golf course right on the beach.
All right. So, okay. First of all, yeah, forced relocations are an ugly thing, as you said. Absolutely. Which is a big part of why I enthusiastically support that part of the, again, suggestion, as opposed to plan, because I don't think there is a plan. Um, because what the Palestinians have been getting so far isn't ugly. It's certainly not ugly enough, and that's what they deserve for October 7th, and for everything they had done up until then. Remember, these are people who, when Israel forced their own citizens out of the Gaza Strip and left all this, all this equipment and infrastructure, they went and destroyed it. They could have used it for free. So the idea that, of course, anybody would build anything for them and they would actually use it like humans is delusional. And I think that's kind of the problem with Trump here. He clearly doesn't understand the Palestinians when he says, they want to live. We're going to build something for them. All of that, sounds obvious to those of us in the West. If somebody says to you, okay, you can move from like a nice two-bedroom house to a mansion, you'd be like, yeah, yeah, you jump all over that. But for the Palestinians, if you don't show them how this is going to help them achieve the goal of Palestinianism, which is the extermination of the Jews, then it is not a good thing for them by their standards, and which is what makes it a wonderful thing in my view. Now, the idea of occupation certainly is not something that The Palestinians don't deserve living under occupation, but the occupiers don't deserve it. Because if Israel or the US or anybody tries to occupy Gaza and occupy it properly, as in have a presence in every aspect of daily life and not have a presence, the kind of presence that Israel now has in Gaza, where if they want to operate somewhere, they move the population, including the terrorists, elsewhere, allow the terrorists to get away. That is not how you occupy. And if there was going to be an occupation, Israeli soldiers would be dying left, right, and center. The international community would be up in arms, and it affects Israel, and it will affect whoever might come after Trump. It might affect Trump himself. Uh, you will not have that if the people of Gaza are not there. Look, peace. Every step that has been taken officially in the direction of peace has caused more war, more death, more destruction because the Palestinians see that they have been rewarded for terrorism. That is what the peace process, so-called peace process, has been. Actual peace is possible if the Palestinians are not there, and in large part because this will be such, as you said, it's so ugly. It's going to be such harsh payment for what they have chosen to do that others will maybe consider whether or not this is the right course of action for them, because they will pay the price.
I agree with that. And I agree also that Trump's major problem is that he's bought into this extremely naive notion that Hamas is sort of imposed upon the Gazans. No. The Gazans chose Hamas to be their rulers in the last election they really had. And the other parties that were winning votes were worse or a little better or just on the same scale of being terrorists. So it's naive about the Palestinian people. They want this. They want to destroy Israel. That's their whole reason for being there, not to have a decent life. But the way Trump puts it belies this when he says, who would want to live in the bombed out Gaza of today? Well, no one would, obviously, if they were sane. But unfortunately, the Palestinians don't have a sane culture. And the large majority of them obviously want to stay there, even if it means martyring themselves for the cause of killing Jews. That's what their point is. That's what their whole raison d'etre is. And again, I just don't. You're right in the sense they've lost the right to be there. They've lost the right to rule themselves in their continuous attacks on Israel. And even if we're just October 7th alone, I would say they've lost the right to do that. On the other hand, and you're right, it would be a long, ugly, brutal occupation if that most of that population remained. Wouldn't it be lovely, Mr. Trump, if 1.8 million of the Palestinians living there decided to go move to Egypt? Yeah, well, Egypt was given that option. And frankly, the Palestinians themselves, to the extent that they've had that option, I don't think they want it. I think they want to be there so they can martyr themselves for the destruction of Israel. So it's unrealistic. Mr. Trump is not realizing the nature of the population and the culture of Gaza right now. Um, that's my primary concern. On the other hand, a very unpleasant uh, context awaits us, whatever it is, whether it's an Israeli occupation, whether it's an American occupation. The other thing Trump is being unrealistic about is the nations around there. What a consortium of international nations will get together to do this. The king of Jordan, the king of Saudi Arabia, and the generalissimo of Egypt will really
Well,
get together to make Gaza a pleasant place. I don't think
so
so.
look, I strongly oppose Trump's tariffs and trade wars, but you can see that he achieved his goal, which that's a side point, but he achieved that through the threat of tariffs. Now,
Right.
I think what should be done with countries who might take in Palestinians, and I mentioned this. I agree with what Eyal said on this show, on the reality show last Tuesday. Egypt and Jordan are too close, and that's not a great place to put the Palestinians. But
Will
yeah, you
Morocco or
can.
Tunisia take them? I mean, where do they go?
Well, good question. But again, all these Arab countries have no right to exist. They're evil regimes, they're evil totalitarian regimes. And you could say, I wouldn't deal with them, period. But if you're going to say You benefit from dealing with the U.S. You will no longer have that benefit unless you take them in whatever way is agreed upon. They don't have to be a part of regular society, but again, the how exactly this would happen if the decision is made that it will happen, there are ways to get it done. It's not easy, as you said, and again, it is ugly. That's what's appealing to me about this. It's ugly. It's a solution that really shows people you do the kind of things that the Palestinians did on October 7th. You celebrate it in the streets. Not a single Palestinian. I keep saying, show me the innocent Palestinian, not the one who's opposed to Hamas doing October 7th because they weren't prepared for what Israel did in return, which of course they were. This is exactly what they wanted. Show me the one who said this is an evil thing to do. This is morally reprehensible. And again, I've asked many people. I have not yet seen an example of one in Gaza. When I ask, sometimes people tell me, son of Hamas, yeah, he left decades ago and he wasn't even in Gaza. So the Palestinian people are more united around the cause of exterminating the Jews than I think any nation is united around any cause. I want to thank our super chatters. Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Thank you, Larry, for the super chat. Larry says SpaceX builds a bunch of shuttles to Mars for relocating all the undesirables in Gaza, the US, and around the world. Musk becomes a trillionaire. Yeah. I've seen this. I don't like putting, what Trump is doing in the US with immigrants in the same category as Gazans. Again, if you're talking about actual criminals among the immigrants, not just criminals in the sense that they broke the law to get in, sure. Yeah,
But
the
peaceful
population of
immigrants
Gaza.
have a right to, and we're not talking about peaceful people who have a right to migrate, in my view. We're talking about the Palestinian population in Gaza, which, as you point out, is uniformly in support of some terrorist group, and they're hell bent on the destruction of Israel. They would have to give up that goal. And I don't see, and as you point out, there really is no example of a Gazan who'd renounce violence against Israel or the West. That they just don't
Yeah,
exist.
yeah, and by the way, Susie mentioned in the chat also that the problem is their ideology. Yes, but it's less of a problem. Again, I think this is ugly as it would be in practice, is a kind solution to the Gazans because wouldn't mind bombing them into the afterlife. So, and I think that's what Israel should have done immediately on October 7th. So, yeah, this is generous.
It's certainly true
By the
that the
way, one
Palestinians
of the
have not
trolls in the
suffered.
chat, just have to tell you, one of the trolls in the chat called you a fake Christian, just so you know.
A fake Christian? I'm not a
Yeah.
Christian at all. I'm an atheist.
Well,
I'm a critic of Christianity, from soup to nuts, a critic of every aspect of the doctrine. So I'm not a fake Christian, except the sense that my parents and grandparents were Christians. But
some people see a book title and they know everything about you. So I think that
okay.
was
Well,
the
no, it's a book critical of Christianity, by the way. I am a supporter of objectivism, which is the diametrical opposite of the ethics of Christianity, FYI. On the
yeah.
other hand,
And
I agree with you, Razi. The Palestinians in Gaza have not suffered enough. They needed to be killed and they needed to suffer a whole lot, many times more. And maybe we could have gotten their attention about something different, but it would still have involved an occupation, in my view, of the Gaza Strip. What this deal for hostages is itself corrupt because it's one of these rewards for it. They have not suffered appropriately. They're being rewarded, if anything, for what they did on October 7th. Now, that's a formula for more October 7th, as we've said again and again. Something radical has to be done, and something unpleasant to the Palestinians living there. And I put the term Palestinians in quotes because, what is a Palestinian but a person who's committed to the destruction of Israel?
yeah, that is what it is. I mean, I use the term, and we have people objecting to using that term, to using the term Gazans. Come on, Gazans is a term for people who live currently in Gaza. They will soon be referred to as Indonesians, hopefully, but at the moment they are Gazans. Um, Look, if Trump wants to do this in terms of how it's going to be taken by America's allies and so-called allies, it's going to be a tough sell. But on the other hand, one of the things that Trump has done in his first term and is doing now that I'm certainly not opposed to is things like saying to his NATO partners, you have to pay into NATO as well. If we're happy to take part, but you have to take part as well. We're not just your free security team. And Yeah, in some senses, look, I I'm hearing myself being too defensive of Trump. I still despise Trump, and I still think, and even with this press conference, I mean, it, it's not clear that he's serious. It's clear that he doesn't understand the Palestinians if he thinks they want to live a better life, and that's what he's offering them. I mean, and it's clear he doesn't understand the issue with Iran, by the way, and doesn't have a clear position on it. He said we're, I think within a day or so, he spoke kind of aggressively towards Iran and then talked about doing a deal. So we don't know with Trump what's going to happen, but
Well, you know,
yeah,
they did change Trump did change policy with respect to Iran. There's no question about it. He's trying to go back to his quote maximum pressure on, economic boycott and so forth of Iran. And he did say there's no way you're going to get a nuclear weapon. I hope the way he praised it was, I hope they can prove to us that they're not building a nuclear weapon, with the implication being we will take it out. Israel and Trump will take out their nuclear facilities if necessary. That's the clear position. On the other hand, he made it quite clear that he's willing to negotiate with them and he wants to live in peace side by side with the monsters who rule Tehran. And that is despicable. He also said in a tweet yesterday the idea that we would blow them to smithereens has been taken out of context. Well, that was his own phrase when he was running for president, that he would blow them to smithereens. And in a couple of different contexts, if they continued to hold hostages, if they threatened or killed Americans, et cetera, et cetera. That was your phrase, Mr. Trump. And now he's reluctantly signing this executive order that puts maximum pressure back on Iran and threatens them if they have a nuclear weapon. Well, I agree that we should use whatever force is necessary to prevent them from getting a nuclear weapon, but I do not. Again, it's his naivete about the regime there. They're not good faith negotiation partners, and he knows they're the source of the money for all these terrorists that have been attacking Israelis and Americans in the region. So there we are.
Thank you, Christian, for the super chat. Christian asks, "Are you happy that Liu Lijun is deported from the U.S.?" I don't know. Is this story confirmed? I mean, as it has been told, I think it's a very nice thing. You see this video of her being arrested, and the cop, takes the mask off, and she's smiling. She's so proud that she got arrested in a pro-Hamas protest. And of course, she would not be smiling if she was arrested in China protesting about anything. It doesn't matter. You would not be smiling. And yeah, if as the story is told, it's a beautiful story. I don't know that it is an actual true story, but I fully support this policy. Yeah, if you have people coming to the US and supporting totalitarianism, send them back to the totalitarian shithole they came from so they can live their values.
Yeah, and any
That
one of these university protesters, these anti-Semitic, pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah protesters that are not, we have to deal with them because they're citizens here. To this extent, I think we should deport people, and all these foreigners who are here on student visas or whatever, who are doing that crap with violent protests against Israel, pro-Hamas protests in America. They should all have their asses deported.
Yeah,
Yesterday.
and the violent part is important to remember. These are always they're riots. They're not protests. They're always some sort of force being used, some sort of so they're doing it in a place where people can't go about their daily lives and so on. So yeah, these are not legitimate. This is not civil disobedience or anything. One of the trolls in the chat says, "I'm sure the vast majority of Israelis, because have more than one passport. Most Palestinians don't have one." So whenever one of these people starts a sentence with "I'm sure," you can rest assured that what's coming next is some fact that they pulled out of their ass and has no basis in reality, because reality is the actual enemy of these people. They take it out on the Jews, but it is reality. Thank you, Ideology, for the super chat. Ideology asks, has Bibi conceded the hostages are dead? I mean, Israel knows that some of the hostages are dead. They know more or less the number, I think. Certainly of the ones who are going to be released in the first phase of the deal. So yeah, what's going to happen when the bodies are returned? I don't know. What's going to happen when, you know, presumably, and this is a very likely scenario, the Bibas family has been killed. I don't know what's going to happen then. Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Jonathan asks, "Where's Alex?" Alex is going to be on the reality show, which starts in a few minutes. James.
No, I sympathize with your position, Razi, about this being the best alternative, but it's couched in a bunch of unrealistic assumptions about the people living there in Gaza, about the Iranian government, about the local Arab states. And in that sense, it's entirely unrealistic, in my view, what Trump is suggesting. But an occupation is necessary, I think. And wouldn't it be great if we could have an international occupation there, which would mean that the multiple nations recognize that the Palestinians there have lost any right to govern themselves, which surely is the case. And it is true, as we pointed out, had Hamas, when they came to power in the early 2000s, lifted a finger to make that place decent, a decent place for their people to live, it could be a wonderful place. But that just shows you how evil the culture is of the quote Palestinians who live there. They exist for one reason, to destroy Israel, and they have lost any right to rule themselves into the indefinite future. Something radical does need to happen. That's for sure. And something that the international community, I'm sure, would not like needs to happen there. On that, we do agree.
Thank you, Jonathan, for another super chat. Jonathan says, "More Alex, please." This is, James is really offended by that, but you will get Alex in a
No,
couple of
I
minutes.
can see that Alex is a lot more pleasant to listen to and look at than I am. That's a no-brainer.
By the way, I have no idea what the people. I have some idea about some of the people on the reality show, but there are very different views on this channel about this. I don't think anybody is as enthusiastic as I am. I don't know if anybody else even supports it at all. But we will find out when we watch the reality show. This is a big topic, whether or not it continues, and Trump tries to put it in place in any way. This is a big topic, so I'm sure we're going to cover it. Of course, we're going to cover it on the reality show in a couple of minutes. I'm sure we're going to cover it in the coming days. Thanks, James. Thanks, everybody, for watching. The reality show starts in a couple of minutes.
Be safe.